Imagine you're sitting in a coffee shop, scrolling through your phone, bombarded with notifications and updates. You feel overwhelmed, yet you can't seem to put it down. In that moment, you might ask yourself, is this really how I want to spend my time? This is a question that has echoed through the ages, from the Stoic philosophers of ancient Rome to the Zen masters of Japan. In this video, we'll explore how their teachings can help us find balance and meaning in our digital age. We'll delve into timeless wisdom that addresses the fundamental questions of life, happiness, and purpose. By tapping into the insights of our ancestors, we can navigate the complexities of modern life with clarity and confidence. As the ancient Greek philosopher Socrates once said, "The unexamined life is not worth living." So let's begin our journey of self-discovery and enlightenment together. Imagine this. You're sitting in a meeting sharing an idea you've worked on for weeks. Just as you're about to finish, a colleague interrupts loudly, dismissively saying, "That'll never work." The room goes silent. Your heart races, your face flushes, and in that split second, you feel the urge to snap back to defend yourself to win. But what if instead you took a breath, smiled, and responded with quiet confidence? What if in that moment you chose calm over chaos? This is the question we'll explore today. Why is staying calm your superpower? It's a question that has echoed through the ages, from the Stoic philosophers of ancient Rome to the Zen masters of Japan. And it's a question that feels more urgent than ever in our fast-paced, often chaotic world. Let me take you back to a time long before smartphones and social media. Marcus Aurelius, the Roman emperor and Stoic philosopher, once wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength." His words remind us that while we can't control what happens to us, we can control how we respond. In other words, our true power lies not in changing the world around us, but in mastering ourselves. Now, fast forward to today. You're stuck in traffic, late for an important appointment, and the car in front of you isn't moving. The frustration builds. You honk, you fume, you feel the stress rising. But what if instead of letting the situation control you, you took a deep breath and reminded yourself, this is temporary. My reaction is my choice. Suddenly, the traffic isn't just an annoyance, it's an opportunity to practice patience, to stay centered when the world around you isn't. This is the essence of staying calm. It's not about suppressing your emotions or pretending everything is fine. It's about recognizing that your response to adversity defines you more than the adversity itself. When you stay calm, you protect your peace. You maintain control, and you open the door to better outcomes. Think of Michelle Obama, who, when faced with harsh criticism, responded not with anger but with grace. When they go low, we go high. Her calm, measured approach didn't just diffuse tension, it inspired millions. But why is this so hard? Why do we often react impulsively, even when we know better? The answer lies in understanding the psychology behind rudeness and conflict, something we'll explore in the next section. For now, consider this. Every time you choose calm over chaos, you're not just avoiding a fight, you're building a superpower that allows you to navigate life's challenges with clarity, confidence, and control. So, as we move forward, I invite you to reflect. When was the last time you let someone else's behavior dictate your emotions? And what might happen if next time you chose differently? 2. The psychology behind rudeness. What drives people to disrespect? Have you ever wondered why people are rude? Why in a moment of tension, someone lashes out, interrupts, or dismisses you without a second thought? It's easy to take it personally, to feel the sting of disrespect and react in kind. But what if we paused to consider the forces driving that behavior? What if instead of reacting, we sought to understand? In this section, we'll explore the psychology behind rudeness, peeling back the layers to reveal what often lies beneath the surface. By understanding the roots of disrespect, we can respond not with anger, but with wisdom. And in doing so, we might just find a path to greater peace, both for ourselves and for those around us. Insecurity, the mask of arrogance. Let's begin with a truth as old as time. Rudeness often stems from insecurity. The ancient Greeks had a word for this: hubris. It described the kind of excessive pride that paradoxically hides deep-seated fears. Think of a coworker who constantly belittles your ideas. Their criticism might not be about your work at all. It could be a reflection of their own doubt, a fear that your success somehow diminishes theirs. When we recognize this, we can see rudeness not as a personal attack, but as a sign of someone grappling with their own inner struggles. Stress, the pressure cooker of modern life. Now, consider the pace of our modern world. We're constantly juggling deadlines, expectations, and the relentless hum of technology. It's no wonder that stress can turn even the kindest among us into someone unrecognizable. Picture a parent who, after a grueling day at work, snaps at their child for spilling a glass of water. The rudeness isn't about the spill, it's about the weight of the day. The Stoics, like Marcus Aurelius, taught us to remain calm amidst such turmoil. They believed that while we can't control external events, we can control our reactions. In moments of stress, rudeness is often a cry for relief, not an indictment of character. The desire for control. When force backfires, rudeness can also be a misguided attempt to assert control. In a heated conversation, one person might interrupt or talk over others, believing that dominance will win the day. But as the Taoist sages knew, true strength lies not in force, but in yielding. Their concept of wu wei, or effortless action, reminds us that letting go can be more powerful than clinging to control. When someone tries to dominate, their rudeness often reveals a deeper fear of losing grip, a fear we can choose to meet with patience, not resistance. Lack of empathy, the missing connection. Finally, rudeness can arise from a simple lack of empathy. In our busy lives, it's easy to forget that others have their own struggles, their own stories. The Buddhist practice of metta, or loving kindness, offers a remedy. Imagine a customer service representative facing a barrage of complaints. Instead of reacting defensively, they might say, "I understand your frustration. Let's see how we can fix this together." That small act of empathy can transform a tense exchange into a moment of connection. Rudeness in this light is often a failure to see beyond oneself, a failure we can gently correct with compassion. A path to understanding. By exploring these psychological drivers, insecurity, stress control, and lack of empathy, we begin to see rudeness not as a personal affront, but as a window into the human condition. This understanding doesn't excuse disrespect, but it does invite us to respond with greater wisdom. As the ancient Chinese philosopher Lao Tzu once said, "Mastering others is strength. Mastering yourself is true power." When we understand what drives rudeness, we can choose responses that align with our values rather than being pulled into the chaos. In the next section, we'll take this understanding a step further. We'll explore practical strategies rooted in both ancient wisdom and modern insight that allow us to respond to rudeness with grace, strength, and unshakable calm. So as we move forward, I invite you to reflect. What might change if the next time you face disrespect, you saw it not as a battle to be won, but as an opportunity to practice true power? 3. Sharp comebacks. Words that stop rudeness in its tracks. In the face of rudeness, we often feel an urge to strike back, to meet fire with fire. But what if there were a way to respond that not only disarms the rudeness, but also elevates us in the process? What if our words could be both sharp and wise, cutting through the tension while preserving our dignity? This is the art of the sharp comeback, a response that is not about winning an argument, but about restoring balance. It's a skill that has been honed by sages and leaders throughout history, from the witty retorts of Winston Churchill to the quiet strength of Mahatma Gandhi. Today, we'll explore how to craft responses that stop rudeness in its tracks, responses that are as thoughtful as they are effective. The power of a well-placed word. Let's begin with a simple truth: words have power. The ancient Chinese philosopher Confucius once said, "Without knowing the force of words, it is impossible to know more." A sharp comeback is not about being clever for cleverness' sake. It's about using language to shift the dynamic, to remind both yourself and the other person of the respect that should underpin every interaction. Consider this scenario. You're in a meeting and a colleague interrupts you mid-sentence saying, "That's a terrible idea." The room falls silent. Instead of reacting defensively, you pause, look them in the eye, and say, "I appreciate your perspective, but I'd like to finish my thought." Simple, direct, and disarming. You've acknowledged their input without letting it derail you. This is the essence of a sharp comeback. It's not about shutting someone down, it's about holding your ground with grace. Examples from history and today. History is replete with examples of sharp comebacks that have diffused tension and asserted dignity. Take Abraham Lincoln, who, when accused of being two-faced, famously replied, "If I had two faces, do you think I'd be wearing this one?" His humor deflected the insult while maintaining his composure. Or consider the modern example of a barista who, when faced with a rude customer demanding, "Do you even know how to make coffee?" calmly responds, "I do, and I'd be happy to make yours just the way you like it." The rudeness is met not with retaliation, but with professionalism and kindness. These responses share a common thread: they refuse to engage in the rudeness, instead redirecting the conversation to a higher plane. They remind us that we don't have to mirror negativity to address it. Crafting your own comebacks. So, how can you craft your own sharp comebacks? Here are a few principles to guide you. Stay calm. Remember the Stoic teaching of Epictetus. It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. A calm demeanor is the foundation of any effective response. Be direct but kind. Address the rudeness without escalating it. For example, if someone cuts you off in conversation, you might say, "I'd love to hear your thoughts after I've finished mine." Use humor wisely. A light touch of humor can diffuse tension, but be careful, it should never come at the expense of the other person's dignity. Think of it as a way to lighten the mood, not to mock. Redirect the focus shift the conversation back to the issue at hand. If someone makes a personal jab, you might say, "Let's focus on the problem we're trying to solve here." Know when to walk away. Sometimes the sharpest comeback is no comeback at all. As the Taoist sages taught, the best fighter is never angry. Silence can be a powerful statement of self-control. A modern example. Let's bring this into the present day. Imagine you're at a family gathering and a relative makes a snide remark about your career choice. Still chasing that dream? Huh? When are you going to get a real job? Instead of defending yourself or snapping back, you could say, "I'm passionate about what I do, and it's teaching me a lot. How's your work going?" This response acknowledges their comment without taking the bait, and it gently redirects the conversation. You've maintained your dignity and kept the peace. The deeper wisdom. At its core, a sharp comeback is not just a tool for handling rudeness, it's a practice in self-mastery. It's about choosing how you engage with the world, even when the world seems intent on pulling you into conflict. As the Buddha taught, holding on to anger is like grasping a hot coal with the intent of throwing it at someone else. You are the one who gets burned. By responding thoughtfully, you protect your own peace while offering the other person a chance to reflect on their behavior. In the next section, we'll delve deeper into the nuances of rudeness itself, exploring the difference between intentional and unintentional disrespect and how understanding this distinction can shape our responses. So, as we move forward, I invite you to consider, what might change? If the next time you face rudeness, you responded not with heat, but with light. 4. Intentional versus unintentional rudeness, decoding the difference. Rudeness is a universal experience, but its nature can vary greatly. Sometimes it's a calculated jab meant to wound or provoke. Other times it's a clumsy misstep born from ignorance or distraction. Distinguishing between intentional and unintentional rudeness is key to responding with wisdom and grace. Consider a colleague who publicly criticizes your work, not to offer constructive feedback, but to undermine your confidence. This is intentional rudeness, a deliberate act of disrespect. Contrast that with a friend who interrupts you frequently during a conversation, not out of malice, but because they're excited and eager to share their thoughts. This is unintentional rudeness, a lapse in awareness rather than an attack. The ancient Stoic philosopher Epictetus reminds us it's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. Whether rudeness is intentional or not, our response defines us. But understanding the intent can guide us toward a more appropriate reaction. In our modern world, rudeness has found new arenas. On social media, trolls deliberately post inflammatory comments to provoke outrage, a clear case of intentional rudeness. Meanwhile, a text message misinterpreted due to lack of tone or context might lead to unintentional offense. Reflect on your own experiences. Have you ever reacted strongly to rudeness without considering whether it was intentional? How might your response change if you knew the rudeness was unintentional? These questions invite us to pause and consider before we react. Now that we've explored the difference between intentional and unintentional rudeness, let's turn our attention to how we can respond effectively to each. In the next section, we'll delve into strategies that allow us to maintain our composure and dignity, no matter the nature of the rudeness we face. 5. Empathy as a secret weapon, turning rudeness into understanding. If you want others to be happy, practice compassion. If you want to be happy, practice compassion. The Dalai Lama. In the face of rudeness, our instinct is often to shield ourselves, to push back, or to retreat. But what if instead of raising our defenses, we chose to lower them just enough to see the person behind the behavior? What if empathy, the quiet act of understanding another's struggle, could transform rudeness into a moment of connection? Empathy is not about excusing disrespect or allowing others to trample our boundaries. It is about recognizing that rudeness rarely comes from a place of strength. More often, it is a mask for pain, stress, or insecurity. The ancient Stoics taught us to look beyond the surface, to understand that people act according to their own inner state. As Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Whenever someone has done wrong by you, immediately consider what notion of good or evil they had in doing it." In other words, rudeness is often less about you and more about the storm raging within the other person. Consider a modern example. You're in line at a busy coffee shop and the barista snaps at you for no apparent reason. Your first impulse might be to snap back to meet sharpness with sharpness. But what if instead you paused and noticed the barista's exhaustion, the long line, the pressure of the morning rush? A simple response like, "Rough day, huh? I get it. Hope it gets better," might not only diffuse the tension, but also remind both of you of your shared humanity. In that moment, empathy becomes a bridge, turning a rude exchange into a small act of understanding. This is the secret power of empathy. It disarms. It shifts the dynamic from confrontation to connection. And yet empathy is often mistaken for weakness, as if understanding others means surrendering our own strength. But history tells a different story. Leaders like Nelson Mandela, who faced decades of injustice, chose empathy not as a sign of defeat, but as a tool for transformation. By seeking to understand even those who wronged him, Mandela turned enemies into allies and division into unity. Empathy in this light is not passive, it is a quiet force capable of changing the course of conversations and sometimes the world. Now, Let us turn the mirror inward. Think of a time when you were the one who spoke harshly or acted rudely. What was stirring within you? Then, were you overwhelmed, afraid, or hurting in some way? Could recognizing that in yourself help you see it in others? This is the heart of empathy, the understanding that we are all at times both the wounded and the wounder. As we move forward, we will explore how to wield this secret weapon in our daily lives, how to respond to rudeness, not with retaliation, but with the kind of understanding that heals rather than harms. With empathy as our foundation, we can now turn to practical strategies that allow us to meet rudeness with grace, strength, and unshakable calm. So I invite you to consider, what might change if the next time you encounter rudeness, you chose to see the struggle beneath the surface? 6. Long-term fixes handling. Repeat offenders with confidence. In life, we often encounter individuals who, despite our best efforts, continue to test our patience. These repeat offenders, whether they be colleagues, family members, or even strangers, can drain our energy and challenge our resolve. But what if we could approach these situations not with frustration, but with a sense of calm confidence? What if we could transform these encounters into opportunities for growth and understanding? The ancient Stoics believed that true strength lies not in changing others, but in mastering ourselves. As Epictetus once said, "We cannot control the actions of others, only our reactions to them." This wisdom is particularly relevant when dealing with repeat offenders. By focusing on our own responses, we can break the cycle of negativity and create a more positive dynamic. Let's consider a modern example, a co-worker who consistently interrupts you during meetings. Instead of reacting with anger or resignation, try addressing the behavior directly but calmly. You might say, "I've noticed that you often interrupt me during meetings. I value your input, but I'd appreciate it if you could let me finish my thoughts." This approach not only sets a clear boundary, but also opens the door for a more respectful interaction. Another strategy is to practice empathy. Often repeat offenders are acting out of their own insecurities or struggles. By trying to understand their perspective, we can respond with compassion rather than defensiveness. For instance, if a family member repeatedly criticizes your choices, you might say, "I understand that you're concerned about my decisions. Can we discuss this in a way that feels supportive rather than critical?" This invites a more constructive conversation and reduces the likelihood of future conflicts. It's also important to recognize when to step back. The Taoist concept of Wu Wei, or effortless action, teaches us that sometimes the best response is no response at all. If a repeat offender continues to provoke you despite your efforts, it may be necessary to limit your interactions or seek support from others. This is not a sign of weakness, but a recognition of your own worth and the need to protect your peace. As we move forward, we will explore how to maintain this sense of calm and confidence in the face of adversity. By embracing these long-term fixes, we can transform our relationships and create a more harmonious environment. So I invite you to reflect. How might your life change if you approached repeat offenders with confidence and understanding? 7. Protecting your peace. Knowing when to walk away. There comes a moment in every storm when the wisest choice is not to fight the wind, but to seek shelter. In life, we often find ourselves caught in tempests, arguments that spiral, relationships that drain, or environments that suffocate our spirit. The question then becomes, when do we stay and weather the storm? And when do we walk away to protect our peace? This is not a question of cowardice, but of courage. It takes strength to recognize that some battles are not worth the cost to our well-being. The ancient Stoics understood this deeply. Epictetus, a philosopher who endured slavery and exile, taught that true freedom lies not in controlling the world around us, but in mastering our own minds. He said, "We cannot control the actions of others, only our reactions to them." In other words, peace is not found in changing others, but in choosing how and when to engage. Consider a modern example. You're in a heated discussion with a friend who refuses to see your point of view. The conversation escalates, voices rise, and you feel your heart racing. In that moment, you have a choice to stay and fight for the last word, or to step back and say, "I think we both need some time to cool off." Walking away doesn't mean you've lost. It means you've chosen your peace over pride. It's a quiet act of self-respect. This principle applies beyond conversations. Think of a job that leaves you exhausted and unfulfilled, where each day feels like a slow erosion of your joy. The Taoist sages spoke of Wu Wei, the art of effortless action, knowing when to let go and flow with the current rather than against it. Sometimes walking away from a toxic environment is not quitting. It's reclaiming your energy for something better aligned with your purpose. But how do we know when to walk away? It begins with awareness, listening to the whispers of your mind and body. Are you constantly tense? Do you feel diminished or disrespected? These are signs that your peace is under siege. The Buddha taught that peace comes from within. Do not seek it without. Protecting your peace means setting boundaries even if it feels uncomfortable. It might mean saying no to an invitation, distancing yourself from a negative influence, or simply choosing silence over argument. Walking away is not always physical. Sometimes it's emotional. You can be present in a situation but refuse to let it disturb your inner calm. Imagine a family gathering where an uncle insists on debating politics, stirring tension with every word. Instead of engaging, you smile and say, "I'd rather not discuss this today," and shift the conversation to lighter topics. You've walked away from the conflict without leaving the room. This is the art of protecting your peace, knowing that your tranquility is worth more than any victory, any last word, or any need to prove yourself. As the poet Rumi wisely said, "Raise your words, not your voice. It is rain that grows flowers, not thunder." Sometimes the gentlest response is to step back and let the storm pass. In the next section, we'll explore how to carry this sense of peace into our daily lives, how to respond to rudeness, not with retaliation, but with the quiet strength that comes from within. So I invite you to reflect. What might you gain by choosing peace over pride the next time you face a storm? 8. Your response. Your brand. How you handle rudeness defines you. In the grand tapestry of life, our interactions with others are the threads that weave our story. Among these threads, our responses to rudeness stand out as defining moments. They are not merely reactions to external stimuli, but reflections of our inner selves. As the Stoic philosopher Marcus Aurelius wisely noted, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. This strength lies not in dominating others, but in mastering ourselves, especially when faced with disrespect." How we choose to respond in these moments shapes not only how others see us, but more importantly, how we see ourselves. Consider Nelson Mandela, who after 27 years of imprisonment, chose forgiveness over vengeance. His response to rudeness and injustice on a grand scale defined him as a leader of unparalleled grace and wisdom. In contrast, think of a modern public figure, perhaps a celebrity or politician, who when faced with a rude question during an interview, responds with humor and poise, turning a potentially awkward moment into a display of confidence and charm. These examples, separated by time and context, share a common truth. Our responses to rudeness are a mirror of our character. But why does this matter? Research in emotional intelligence shows that individuals who respond calmly to rudeness experience lower stress levels and higher self-esteem. By choosing our responses wisely, we protect our mental health and cultivate a sense of inner peace. This is not just about feeling good in the moment, it's about building a personal brand, a reputation that reflects our values and resilience. Let's bring this closer to home. Imagine a co-worker who constantly interrupts you during meetings. Instead of reacting with frustration, you could say, "I value your enthusiasm, but let's take turns to ensure everyone is heard." This not only addresses the behavior, but also maintains a respectful atmosphere. Or, when a family member offers unsolicited criticism, you might respond with, "I appreciate your concern, but I'm confident in my choices." These responses are not just words. They are statements of who you are: calm, thoughtful, and in control. Take a moment to reflect. Think about a recent encounter with rudeness. How did you respond? What does that say about your values and character? Remember, each response is an opportunity to reinforce who you are. We've all had those moments when we wish we had a witty comeback ready, but sometimes the best response is a simple, calm acknowledgement. It's not about winning the argument. It's about staying true to yourself. While individual moments matter, it's the pattern of our responses that truly shapes our personal brand. In the next section, we'll explore how to build consistency in our actions and create a legacy of grace and strength. So I invite you to consider, what kind of brand are you building with your responses? 9. Mistakes to avoid. Don't let rudeness derail you. In the journey of life, we all encounter rudeness, those moments when someone's words or actions sting, tempting us to react in ways we might later regret. It's a universal experience, one that can catch us off guard and pull us into a spiral of negativity. But what if we could learn to navigate these moments with grace, avoiding the pitfalls that so often derail us? What if instead of being swept away by the storm, we could stand firm, rooted in our own strength? This is not about perfection, for we are all human, and missteps are part of the path. Rather, it's about recognizing the common mistakes we make when faced with rudeness and gently guiding ourselves toward a better way. The ancient Stoics, who sought to live in harmony with nature and reason, offered timeless wisdom on this very challenge. Epictetus, a philosopher who rose from slavery to teach the art of inner freedom, reminds us, it's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. In other words, rudeness itself is not the problem. It's our response that defines the moment. So what are the mistakes we often make? Let's explore them together, not with judgment, but with the understanding that we've all been there. First, there's the impulse to react immediately to fire back with words as sharp as those thrown at us. Picture yourself in traffic when another driver cuts you off and you feel the urge to honk, to shout, to let your anger flare. It's a natural response, but one that rarely leads to peace. Or think of a time when a rude comment online tempted you to engage in a heated argument, only to leave you drained and frustrated. In these moments, we forget the wisdom of the Taoists, who taught that the best fighter is never angry. By reacting impulsively, we give away our power, letting rudeness dictate our emotions. Another common mistake is internalizing the rudeness, allowing it to fester within us. We might replay the encounter in our minds, wondering what we did to deserve such treatment or questioning our own worth. This is a heavy burden to carry, one that the Buddha addressed when he said, "You will not be punished for your anger, you will be punished by your anger." When we hold on to rudeness, we let it poison our peace, forgetting that the behavior of others is often a reflection of their own struggles, not ours. Then there's the trap of escalation, turning a small slight into a full-blown conflict. We've all seen it happen. A minor disagreement spirals into a shouting match, leaving both sides wounded. In these moments, we lose sight of the bigger picture, forgetting the words of Martin Luther King Jr., who urged us to let no man pull you so low as to hate him. Escalation may feel satisfying in the moment, but it rarely brings resolution. So how do we avoid these mistakes? It begins with awareness, pausing to breathe, to reflect before we respond. The Stoics practiced this through the art of mindfulness, training themselves to observe their emotions without being ruled by them. In our modern world, this might look like taking a deep breath before replying to a rude email or stepping away from a tense conversation to gather your thoughts. It's not about suppressing your feelings, but about choosing how to express them. Let's consider a modern example of grace under pressure. Michelle Obama, when faced with harsh criticism, famously said, "When they go low, we go high." Her response wasn't just a clever comeback, it was a choice to rise above to maintain dignity in the face of disrespect. Or think of the countless times we've seen public figures like athletes or artists handle rude questions with humor and poise, turning potential conflicts into moments of connection. Now, I invite you to reflect. Think of a time when you reacted to rudeness in a way that left you feeling unsettled. How did it affect you afterward? What might you have done differently? These questions aren't meant to shame, but to illuminate. We've all stumbled, and that's okay. The beauty of life lies in our ability to learn to grow, to choose a different path next time. As we move toward our conclusion, remember this. By avoiding these common mistakes, reacting impulsively, internalizing rudeness, or escalating conflicts, we can preserve our peace and dignity. In the final section, we'll explore how to turn these lessons into a lifelong practice, building a legacy of grace and strength. So I leave you with this thought. What might your life look like if you met rudeness not with resistance, but with the quiet power of self-control? Den. Conclusion. Rising above rudeness with strength and grace. As we draw this journey to a close, let us pause to reflect on the path we've traveled together. Like a lotus flower that rises from the murky depths to bloom in the light, we too can emerge from the challenges of rudeness with grace and strength. Throughout this video, we've explored the many facets of disrespect, its roots, its forms, and most importantly, how we can respond in ways that honor our own dignity. We began by understanding the psychology behind rudeness, recognizing that it often stems from the struggles of others, not our own shortcomings. We learned the art of sharp comebacks, not as weapons, but as tools to assert our worth with wit and wisdom. We distinguish between intentional and unintentional rudeness, allowing us to tailor our responses with discernment. Empathy emerged as a quiet force, enabling us to see beyond the behavior to the human being beneath. We discussed long-term strategies for handling repeat offenders and the courage it takes to walk away when necessary to protect our peace. We reflected on how our responses define us, shaping the personal brand we carry into the world, and we examined the common mistakes that can pull us off course if we're not mindful. Now, as we stand at the end of this exploration, I invite you to carry these lessons forward. Remember that rudeness is often a mirror of the other person's inner world, not a measure of your worth. By choosing to respond with strength and grace, you not only preserve your own peace, but also become a beacon for others. In the words of the Buddha, you will not be punished for your anger. You will be punished by your anger. Let us then rise above rudeness, not with weakness, but with the quiet power of self-mastery. True strength lies not in reacting to every slight, but in knowing when to engage and when to let go. As you move forward, may you do so with the grace to handle life's challenges and the wisdom to protect your peace. For it is in these moments of choice that we define who we are.